I thought, well, maybe we've started. Let's go.
No, that was our orientation, and so now I've hit the record button. And then typically
Okay.
what I do, if you've seen these, yeah, that's perfect. And so what happens when you hit end is then this automatically takes its juju and it turns it into an MP4 recording, video recording. And so then I take this recording and then I drop it into what's called iMovie, and I make about a 50 to 60 minute worship video that has music and readings and this and that. And so this piece, like what I'm saying right now, I'll edit out, I'll cut out. Holy Spirit, God of the morning and of the night, literally your breeze is blowing across in this space and time. Literally, as we are recording, your rains are falling across our lands all the way down into Louisiana. And so as we gather in this literal space, we ask that across this virtual space of whenever your people are watching and listening and opening their hearts, that all the meditations occurring in these spaces and times, may they be acceptable and pleasing in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen and amen. Michael LeBlanc, welcome to High Country United Church of Christ and my metaphorical table. Michael, you're sitting in Lafayette, Louisiana right now?
I am. I'm in my office in Lafayette, Louisiana, watching the rain fall.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thanks. No, I appreciate it. Huh?
Go ahead.
No, I said I just appreciate the invite.
Yeah, totally. I welcome you back to the High Country UCC space. You've been with us in person before.
I know. That was like 3 years ago, maybe?
Maybe. I might have to stop and go get a drink of water. I forgot to bring my water with me.
If I could pass that to you, I would.
The last time you came and saw us, you had just completed this book, Manifest a Better Life with God.
Yes.
And now you're 3 years post that book. And what has been happening lately with you in that book, and or the concepts that you offered in that book?
It's interesting because when I went over there to do that workshop around the book, it was like, oh my God. I just kind of wrote it. I was a new author. I'm kind of relatively private from a spiritual perspective. And so here I am now. I have a book out about what I believe and stuff. So, and then to go off and do a workshop about it, it was something I really wanted to do. It was just a very stretch out of what I had been doing. And it's really been a journey to get comfortable, confident, feel like it's kind of like, well, who the hell are you to talk about this stuff? And so it's really been a journey to feel comfortable talking about God and my understanding of God and my journey and the God I used to know, is that version is no longer really a version I believe in anymore. But I still use the word God. Like I didn't feel like the word had to go away, but my understanding had to change. And so, like I'm doing a master class, which you're aware of, where I was talking to a business coach of mine, and he does master classes with John Maxwell, right? And he's certified with John Maxwell, so he can teach John Maxwell. And I was like, well, what do you mean by master class? And he goes, well, we take a chapter, we discuss. And I was like, well, I have a book. I could do a master class. And then, you and I have done a lot of training, and it's like, well, I want it to be an experience more than a discussion. And so anyway, so I decided to do this 8-week dive into it, but I wanted to have experiences. So I wanted to practice centering prayer, and I wanted to do guided meditations and kind of do a little bit of healing work during those classes and stuff. But along the way, I did start writing some just inspirational pieces. And I'm a big gardener, so I would take a picture from my garden and I would write the inspirational piece, and then I would take a quote and I would put it, and then I shared it on social media. Yeah, so Divine Dirt became after about a year and a half, I had a collection of these stories and shares and lessons and teachings, and then I kind of paired them with pictures from the garden, and I didn't really know I just started sharing them, and I didn't know what was gonna. A lot of times I was writing it for me. I was like, I need the encouragement, I need the reminders. And then I was like, well, let's just share them. And I felt guided to kind of do that. And then people were like, hey, I really needed to hear that today. And that was perfect timing. And that really helped me get through A, B, or C. And so really in the last 3 years, I mean, there've been continuing to practice what's in Manifest a Better Life with God, but then creating Divine Dirt happened in there. And then just, I feel like my connection, being willing to kind of let my divine self guide more. I think I'm wording that right. It feels kind of right. Like it's been there all along, but there's still a part of me that it is a giving up control, but I'm not a big faith person. If I understand and feel like I know, then we're good. But I'm faith isn't the right word for how I go about things. Like there's a growing understanding of what my experience with God, and as that experience, it's a very felt experience for me. And that sort of becomes something and becomes more. And then I start trusting that more. So I kind of grew up with folks who just sort of had blind faith, if you will, like, well, the Bible said so. And it's like, yeah, that's not good enough for me.
And there was a point in your journey where you fired God. Is that right? Is that a story you tell?
I did. I've always sort of prayed, I guess, and I think a lot of folks do. But when I went to college, so at 17, I took off and I went to LSU because I graduated just because of where I was born and the year I was born, and we didn't have kindergarten. So I started, at 5. And so I was raised Catholic, but it was just sort of what you did. You went to catechism and you went to church on Sunday, and I wasn't in a real religious family. So, and I think in some ways that helped because I didn't have a lot of hangups. I just sort of had this sort of, a general sense of things. But when I went to LSU, I got involved with the Catholic Student Center, and it became very personal and it was meaningful. And there were retreats I went through that were very, it became a very Michael and God experience and Michael and Jesus experience. And I got really into it, and I tend to throw myself into stuff. So I remember I was like, all right, I'm going to be a priest. That's it. That's what I'm doing. I sat out of school. I was probably my 3rd year in. I was like, all right, I'm going to be a priest. I got a job cooking at a seafood steakhouse so I could sort of stay where I was. And they would give me time off to go, they had come and see programs.
Yeah.
And so I could go live with these different religions. It was all Catholic orders, but it was not like a parish church kind of thing. Like I did work in the Appalachian Mountains with this particular order, and that's what they did, though. And then there was another one with the Oblates in San Antonio. They had a certain mission. And I had prayed for 3 signs One was blue roses. And I'd never seen a blue rose in my life. So I said, there we go. Let's use that. Let's go for something that doesn't exist. And I remember when I went to the Oblates Come and See thing, I walked into this house and on this mantle was this big vase of blue roses. And I don't remember what the other two signs were, but that one really hit me. But I ended up not being a priest for it. I wasn't religious, was one of the things I came to terms with. The Bible was significant in a certain way growing up, but it just seemed limited, at least my understanding, and I wanted more than that. And I was gay, so it's like, all right, let's just not be a Catholic priest, based on those three things. But what I remember is I did want more. Like the spiritual piece remained, and I remember having this argument with God, and it was just you're not enough. You're just not. And all this stuff about, well, when you die and stuff, it's like, well, who gives a crap? I live here and I'm here now, and all that is just useless. And if you can't be useless while I'm here, then I have no use for you. I don't need you then, I need you now. And I just remember having this big argument, and I was like, you're just fired. But the piece that also I remember is I really did want more. And more is exactly what happened. And it has, that passion has never really quit. Even though I took different adventures away from it, it seems like it's always called me back. And like, so Manifest a Better Life was God was me. I'd ventured into the corporate world for different reasons. And it was something kept like, this is not your passion. You're good at this, but you don't love this. And I talk a little bit about my journey in the book, because more is really what happened. And it happened through a lot of my spirituality has happened through books and through teachings and writings. And so yes, it's.
And I think a piece of why you're with us this week, Michael, is we're in a worship series called Beguiled by Beauty. Cultivating a life of contemplation and action. And for me, that word beguiled has had a few different resonances. One of those is tricked into this life of spirituality, tricked into this calling from God to then be called into an action that sometimes or too often we resist, but there's an openness there. We get beguiled into God's grace and love and mercy. Our hearts are broken open, and we can't help but to act and to love our neighbor as ourselves. We can't help but to see our Black brothers and sisters and to know that they matter. We can't help but to jump into places where they can be scary, or they can cause us to cry and emote, and our emotions get broken open.
Right.
And then that word beguiled is also sometimes a soothing, a wooing into a divine love. And all for me wrapped up in this subtitle of cultivating a life of contemplation. And I know that for you, because I have traveled with you for many years, you have this amazing centering prayer practice that indeed you learned from Father Thomas Keating, right? And so the contemplative piece of you continues to draw you into that love and that grace. And so while you don't call yourself religious, and while in one guise you fired God, you found this spiritual beauty that literally offers you a resilience that then is a thriving. And that's our theme today, is this understanding that the spiritual part of ourselves, when we can tap into that, and maybe not we tapping in, but we do the practice, the intentionality to get still and to get quiet and to allow ourselves a oneness with the great divine. And I know that's a huge piece of who you are. And I'm wondering if you speak a little bit more to that.
Sure. Because when you said contemplative and action, right? Like those two things. to me, the contemplative always comes first.
Yeah.
and when I don't do it that way, it's always harder, right? I do
Right.
what I'm supposed to do, and then it has its way to get from A to B, and that's always just a very harder way to go. And the world's way is always a little bit harder way to go. So contemplative, yeah. So centered prayer, gosh, that was in the early 90s, I think, was when I got introduced. So Tim and Barbara Cook were ministers at a little church in Austin called the Contemplative Church of Conscious Harmony. And I just fell in love with it. And one of their key practices in the church was centering prayer. And then they knew Father Thomas Keating, and they brought him in, and he was just hysterical. He was this tall, lanky guy, but he was just funny. But I remember, you have experiences and they just stick with you. So I can still today remember when I was beginning to do centering prayer and having just these experiences of a presence and and it was nothing was happening out there that was causing the physical sensations I was having. It was all me going in here and then having that experience. And centering prayer, I think what I loved about it, it was not a verbal prayer. It was not a talking prayer. It was not a asking prayer. It was not you weren't even contemplating like a scripture or a reading. It was really about be silent and be with. And when you drift off, come back and be silent and be with. And when you drift off, and there's a lot of drifting off, you find out real quick how your mind constantly takes you places when you start trying to do something different. and so, but those experiences just sort of hooked me in a way, and it's remained a foundation of my daily practice, and to different degrees of like how long I'll do it. But I'm remembering my first time I ever did a 10-day silent centering prayer retreat. 10 freaking days. I was just like, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. And I remember it was challenging. Then there was this point of like, you cross something and then it just kind of went by. But what I mostly remember is for months after, and I literally mean months after, I felt so incredibly just grounded and centered, and it just lasted. And I've never had anything do that before, but it was that prolonged periods of silence and being with the divine that really, it really redid my system in a way. And it lasted and I just remember months going by and having that lingering feeling. So
when you talk about contemplation as the precursor to action, we're living in a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We're told to stay home. So we're making the choice when we do go out, when and how do we go out? Do we wear a mask? It's been strongly suggested in here in North Carolina. We just had the governor require us by order to wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And we're living in a time when another Black person, George Floyd, has been murdered. And so it looks like this may be the time when the racial peace is finally being seen by all of us now, maybe, I don't know. And our psalm today, our sacred text, is about this singing praises to Yahweh, or we don't even want to say the name of God because then that actually takes away the power. But we know that there is a divine essence that when we tap into it, when we connect with it, there is something that literally opens us up. And in the midst of this time when these Psalms were written, they were under exile. You know, it was not a happy time.
Mm.
And the second piece of this Psalm is when I focus on the idols of the world, gold and silver, and then my eyes are closed and my ears are closed and my mouth is closed. I'm listening to different voices out there, and some of the voices are saying, you know, we've specifically around the race issue, is we've done the political work, or we've attempted to do the political work, we've attempted to do the social work, and really the last frontier is the spiritual work. It's the heart work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering, for you and your perspective, as you hear this life of contemplation that then moves us into action, where is that working for you, and what are you hearing right now?
So just when I think about the racism specifically, right? Because the way I, you know, like, because there's more talk about systemic racism and it's in our systems, and I think, oh, that's true. I mean, you know, that we were founded. So my way of thinking about it, it's in the consciousness of humanity. And when something is in the consciousness of humanity, it will be expressed in the world. Mm-hmm. And so this country was started where racism was in the consciousness of it from the get-go. And so the systems, of course, would be geared in that way, mm-hmm. right? My thing is, though, you could end it tomorrow and you could improve every system we have. But if it's still in the consciousness of us as humans, it's still going to seep its little head. Like, you know, it's still not going to be done. Because and that's where I feel like it is, and it's twofold. So as a white guy, I wrote an article recently as like racism from a white gay guy is what, but it was about that. It's about, I have to deal with it as part of Michael's consciousness. That's the part I can play. And what inspired me to write it was I was watching Oprah interview some Black leaders, and I was listening to their conversation. And one of the things that kept just gnawing at me was, I don't remember which person, but it was just this hopelessness of like, will white people ever get it, right? And to a degree, we won't, because it's not our life, if you will. But there was a part of me that's like, so it became part of the theme of the article was don't give up on me. And I thought of myself as a gay guy and how important it was to have non-gay people support me, right? It's one thing to have gay people support you, but it's different when it's like the group that oppresses you is supporting you, right? And they're starting to shift and change and stuff like that. And I was like, you know, I wrote it from a perspective of like, here's what I want Black people I know or don't know to know what I'm willing to do so they don't give up on me. Because it's like, we are getting it to the degree that we can get it. It's going to be mine to continue to address. Like, so when I have certain reactions within, I'm not going to, it's like, and I said it in there, I said, I think it's wrong. I don't know, wrong's not the right word. It's dangerous for a white person to say I'm not racist. Because if I do that, then I'm going to quit looking. I'm not going to pay attention anymore because I'm done, right? I'm over it. And then I'm not going to notice the subtle ways that it might still be like brewing its little head. So that's really my reason for pushing for like, well, don't say that, you know, but be aware it's in our consciousness and no one escaped it. If you were born and you were born at this period of time, it was in the consciousness of humanity and you did not escape it. And on the flip side, I think of, so a Black person who had to live with it, if it ended tomorrow, you still have to deal with the way it hurt you and oppressed you and any issues you have of where you might have believed you were less because it told you you were less and all that kind of stuff. So there's to me it's in the consciousness in both places, and that's where the real work will happen, and that's where as we get it out of our consciousness, it will by nature get out of our systems, and we will come up with something better. So I don't disagree with approaching systems and stuff, but if you're not doing the other, like to me, a win-win is you do both. not just the outer world part of it. You know, you can tear statues down all day long, but it's not going to change the consciousness. But it is an act that could show movement, right? Which I get is important.
Right. Right. So when you start saying how to change our consciousness and the work that I need to do to begin to be conscious to the divine nature, and not just the divine nature in me, but the divine nature in the plants and the flowers and my neighbor who has a different skin color than me, you offer exercises and suggested prayers, except that's not what you call it.
You know, so I'm not sure if this is what you're speaking to, but it's where my head's going. So
Good.
But when I wrote Manifest a Better Life with God, I did not know this book was going to happen. I went into prayer every time I would write, and I would start writing, and my writing coach was like, do not edit, just let yourself write, which is really not, it's hard to do that. But I would get into it, and then this flow would start happening. And then part one of the book kept wanting to happen. And I never planned on writing part one of the book, which is about your inherent God nature and our relationship to God and God as consciousness. But this whole analogy of a wave and the ocean happened. And I think it's very fitting for racism in the world. And it was just thinking of God consciousness as this ocean, and it wants to express. It's kind of like the thing on the abyss that we were talking about earlier. Like, we are expressions of it, so that I feel like so it can experience itself. It can experience all the beauty of things and the variety of things, and I think sometimes the contrast of things. But that just sort of came to me. It was not like I ever intended it, but when I pictured the ocean and the waves, there's millions of waves, and from a wave perspective, they're all different and separate and different sizes and shapes and all that kind of stuff. But if you go into the wave, there's really just one thing going on. And to me, that's just the same thing with people. It's just, yeah, outwardly, I think by nature, diversity and abundance is the name of the game. I mean, look around. You know, you can't like go to nature just itself, and it's abundant and it's diverse. It's not like there's just oak trees and they're not all the same, you know. And I think that's on purpose. And I think the same is true when it comes to humanity and people. It's like diversity was the plan, and abundance was the plan. But it's the outer stuff looks different, and it's supposed to, and it was never meant to look the same, sound the same, believe the same, do the same, dress the same, act the same. But within, if you peel that away, or if you go from the wave into the ocean, it is the same, you know. And I think the more we get with that and feel that and be with that, the ridiculousness that I would think you're different because your skin is different, you start to understand how ridiculous that is. And it becomes like, how the hell did we ever think otherwise? You know, and like, how far removed were we from truly understanding our divinity, if you will, for that line of thought to even occur, right? Because you can't be in touch with the divine self and have that make sense to you. Is how it feels for me. So those were thoughts.
I heard you talking a little bit about abundance and amazingness that is all around us. And a piece of our worship experience that is about to happen is we're going to be washed in beauty. And as we are washed in beauty, like I know a piece of your practice is each morning that you go and you walk in your garden. What does that do for you when your practice each day is to literally connect with the beauty that's in your garden?
So the humorous part of it is I try to do it and not.
And not what? It had a little blurb.
I try to do it and not pull weeds. It's like, no, just go and enjoy it, you know? And next thing you know, I've got my coffee on the ground and I'm pulling some weeds out. But I think I grew up on a farm, so outdoors was a grounding space for me, and I grew up kind of by myself on a farm. I had older brothers and cousins, but I was the youngest on the farm, so I would just adventure, and so being in nature became a kind of a soothing sort of space for me, and it's kind of retained. Like I still love gardening, but there is the inspiration for Divine Dirt happened through me doing that. And there was one particular flower. It was this little salvia.
Mm.
And that actually is the picture. I saw that, and it was kind of like during centering prayer and other times, just this experience took over. And it was just this, you said like the essence of God earlier. And that essence had a felt experience for me. And again, there was nothing going on out there. It wasn't like foggy and I was feeling a mist. You know, it was a from within. And that moment with that flower just sort of brought that. So, and I remember times in my life where I had kind of chronic anxiety and worry and trying to get my neurology to shift and not be wired like that was difficult. But I would literally do my centering prayer practice and meditation practices outside, and I would make myself sit on the earth, like nothing between me and the earth except my pair of pants, right? No pillow. I didn't really want a blanket. I wanted, but there was and Native American spirituality has been a part of my journey, and that some of that came from there. But what would happen is the moment I would do it and the moment I would sit and I would be on the earth, all that just frantic, urgent worry, angst, energy would just get grounded. Like it would just, and so there's a way that meditating and centering prayer was helping, but also when I would do it outside in chronic anxiety times, just helped rewire me in a certain way. So nature's always sort of played a part in, even today, if I need to feel better, I'll just go for a walk. And I know I'm going to feel better. I have 2 dogs and we walk every morning around 6:15. And I walk them in early evening around, well, now that it's summer, it's probably more like 7:30. And I'm so glad I have them because they make me have to do that, you know. And in mornings, it's like I don't really want to. The moment I do it and come back, I feel better. So to me, nature's people have crap. Nature does not.
Well, you pull weeds. There's mosquitoes, there's roaches,
Yeah.
there's thorny multiflora rose here that just rips up my arms. There's poison ivy that I'm still getting over.
Yeah. Those wounds aren't the same. It's still a little different, but yeah. So, hey, so
contemplative.
Yeah, and action. I just was kind of remembering And it's a work in progress for me. So as I say this, I don't say it as someone who's, actually, I don't say anything I've said today as someone who's like um, an expert on anything. I just, my brother has a passion for architecture. I have this passion for spirituality, and why that is, I don't really know.
So I'm just now remembering that I totally butchered it. It's actually so beguiled by beauty. It's actually cultivating a life of contemplation and compassion.
Oh, okay.
Is compassion significantly different than action?
It feels, the words feel different to me.
Compassion technically means with struggle, so we struggle with one another. And so I struggle with you, I maybe even struggle with God as we seek to offer grace and love to try to transform the world, one act of hope or one act of love at a time. That's a piece of some of my mantras. But when we allow the divine to really open us up, and we cultivate this life of contemplation where we're really seeking into the divine, our eyes and our ears and our hands do get opened. And I think that then allows us this entrance into compassion, which is then to struggle with the other. And so that when we are struggling with the other, then my eyes and my mouth are opened, right? Which is different than when I make the world my idol. And I'm not in relationship with the divine or with God or Yahweh.
Right.
That's what it feels like to me.
No, I more and more I try to decide what I should do. I try to go within first and get a sense of I try to get a sense of my wholeness, my divineness, my all of me versus just my human me. Because I feel we're both at the same time. Right now, I'm God expressing as Michael, and I'm not just Michael, the physical guy. But it takes a little bit work on the Michael, the physical guy, to get that, because that's not how I was trained and to think and believe and feel and experience. So, but as I do it, it's growing. And so my work, though, is before I tend to like, well, what to do, let me get in touch with that. Let me get in touch with what Esther Hicks would call the larger part of yourself, right? And then from there, let's see what I'm feeling guided to do, right? Because my analytical mind it's pretty limited. I mean, it's brilliant. The brain's pretty brilliant, but it's still a pretty limited thing. Whereas this divine, it doesn't have limits. And so what it can come up with I should do can be way beyond what I would have thought of. And then actually writing that article I was talking about Don't Give Up on Me, was a very inspired thing from within here to write that. It wasn't something my brain ever really came up with. So when I think of, and I'll come back to compassion, but when I think of contemplation and action, it's like, well, do the go within first, and then see what even around my business, I kind of like, it's too easy to get drawn into social media, and you got to have emails and all these funnels and all this marketing stuff. And it's just like, that's a very world's way of getting it. And I understand it. But let's just see what this divine thing wants me to do today with my business and put forth and that kind of stuff. And sometimes we're very do-oriented in America. We're very action-oriented. And sometimes what it says is don't do that. Go meditate for 30 more minutes. And I really will. I'll get a genuine desire, go and be in silence, for the next 30, 45 minutes. Stay there longer than you usually stay there, and do that. Grow your business that way. And it goes against everything, the outer world tells me I should be doing. But, it's like, so when I think of action, I think of going in first and then kind of letting that guide me. When you're talking about compassion, So I'm going to share a story, and it's one of my chapters in that book that just came to mind when you were talking about it. It's called Two Experiments with Love. And I was leaving, I did a 7-day Joe Dispenza advanced intensive retreat. And you spend hours, good God, hours and hours in meditations. And a lot of them are guided meditations that he does. But anyway, I was leaving, I was at the airport that morning, and you fly. So you're getting up to the counter, and there's two guys in front of me, and they're probably about 60-ish, and they're just mad and they're irritable, and the poor United person behind the counter is just trying to deal with them, like she can control all that or whatever. And I could just feel it. And I've just left this beautiful space of 7 days of and now here's their anger, and sometimes when people are angry, they want to make eye contact with you because they want to just start doing it towards you. And I was like, oh no, I am not giving you my attention because I do not want that coming my way. And so I decided while I'm standing in line, so if you were looking at me, I look like a person who's just in line waiting their turn. But within, I decided, I'm going to just breathe into my heart. I'm going to breathe in my heart space. I'm going to keep feeling into that space. And then when I kind of could feel it, I'm like, I'm just going to send love, like this energy, this thing called love. I'm going to really genuinely send it out to this situation in front of me, to these two people and this agent. And so outwardly, I'm just a guy standing in line, but inwardly, this is what Michael was doing. And I'm just sending it. And no expectation, but let's just send a different energy than what's occurring. And next thing you know, I hear LeBlanc, Lafayette, she's calling me, right? She's got my ticket to put on my bag to check my luggage. And the angriest guy has this huge piece of luggage on the scale in front of me, and she makes him move his luggage out of the way, which just pisses him off even more. And she just calls me up, puts my luggage on there. She apologizes for the delay. Now, it's been maybe 5 minutes. It hasn't been long at all. And I just appreciate her. And I said, hey, it's not been a wait, and thanks for what you do. And then off I go on my trip. And these guys are stewing. But it was a moment of, I could have gone the other direction. I could have started getting worried about the delays and what they were mad about and listening to it, and then me getting worked up. And I had another moment with my husband. He came home and he was just stressed. It was his day off. He was supposed to not work. He's been working all day, and you can just feel it. He's just like irritated. And I did the same thing. I was like, let me just go to my heart, and I'm just going to start sending love, right? And I just did it for a few minutes. Next thing you know, he comes kind of sit by me, and TV's on, and I just keep doing it, and I just keep doing it. Next thing you know, he kind of like leans into me. And he just kind of melts, and he just sort of folds in, and he just chills, and we just stay there for a few minutes, and then we end up going to dinner, and it was a nice dinner, and because initially we were going to dinner, and I was like, oh God, it's just gonna suck because he's in this like place, and that's gonna be the whole dinner. And so it was just a way of, is it possible to send something else out in the midst of something else? And I think, I don't know exactly how that relates to compassion and all, but when you mentioned it, that's what came to me was, here's anger, and I have a choice. And I don't always succeed in that choice. But in those couple of examples, I did something different. But I did it on a felt level, and I think that matters. It wasn't a head game. I wasn't just thinking happy thoughts. I was in a felt place of really feeling something and sending that. And in both situations, it definitely seemed to shift what was going on. So
no, I think that's exactly right. I mean, those that walk in the Christian circles, Jesus teaches that there's 2 greatest commandments, and really everything rests on those, is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And so you're sending that love, right? And so when we can live in that love, and when we can hold that right here, and it is in that heart space, and that's where we're coming from. And when we get into those situations when the world tells us to point our finger or to get angry or to rip it apart, right? So we get into this space of love. And when we can have that in our heart space, and that is truly at the matter of our heart, I think it's transformative, which is why I think we say that over and over, that love can transform. It's not always a snap of the finger. It's not always the easiest thing to do. And I think that's a piece of our practice during the Eastertide season. We're called to be Eastering people, which for us we defined as practicing resurrection, practicing this new understanding of living. And for me, that attempt, I'm not always successful at it, to have at the core, this essence of love and grace. And sometimes that can be an infuriating, you're going to tell people the facts and this is not okay. And there are those moments that you're listening and discerning from within to know, if I send love out into this space, what then can be transformed by that?
Right. Because I don't think it wasn't a passive role.
Right.
It was work, but it was inner,
Right.
And I'm thinking of a moment, and I'm kind of bringing it back to racism, and because I think the step up for a white person is to interrupt other white people. Like, to me, that's not a black person's job. That's my job.
Right.
And it'll have more significance if it's my job. So my neighbor and I are chatting in her little garden. She's also a gardener. And she goes, now I've had 3 glasses of wine, so just know. But she was getting into the whole racism Trump thing, right? And she knows I'm on a different place. And I remember sitting there and it's like, okay, I am going to listen to her, but I'm not going to not put a different mirror up about things, because I don't want my silence for her to take it as I agree with her on the things she's talking about. So it was a balance of, I'm going to love her and I'm not going to get angry at her and I'm not going to yell at her and I'm not going to get into this big argument about our differences. But I am going to not take a different stance about it, to just sort of be okay with what, so it is a balance, and it went really well. I mean, it was just she had her things in extreme kind of situations, and I would just sort of bring it back around to, but at the end of the day, you can't ignore that it's an issue, regardless of all that stuff. Yeah, it was just this way, and it was good, and we both had it was just a nice conversation, right? But it was one of those, it felt better to do that than to just, it's like, to me, loving doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean just accept everything. Because sometimes I think it was useful for her to know there's something else. And you're from a different generation, and I get it, but there's something else, but how to do that, I think, really matters. So it was kind of a blend of those. So yeah,
that's fantastic.
cool.
So as we wrap this time up, there is going to be moments coming up very soon for you to be washed in beauty. And as you are washed in beauty, know that there is a divine abyss within you that you have the opportunity to tap into, such that it opens your heart and your spirit to the divine nature, not just within you, but within those things that are all around you. And so may that be our prayer this day.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
So I think our focus is divine awareness itself. And part of my role is, well, where am I going to put it? And when I hear you talk about beauty, it's like, there's a decision on my part. I have to then look for beauty. because I can look for other stuff too. I mean, it's like it. So I have this thing called divine focus. So where am I going to focus it? And I can let the outer world decide where I focus it. So I can watch CNN and it's going to focus it somewhere. And it's going to focus it on the worst of the worst, and it's going to sensationalize it because that's the news. But for beauty, it's like, okay, then let me deliberately focus it towards beauty, and I'll see tons of it if I do that. So.
And so anything that we can do to help center us and then know what to do with that, I think would be a helpful tool, helpful practice, helpful next step.
Okay, cool. Want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I want you to talk about what you're doing as if you have a class of people before you and we're all following you.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. I'm not going to talk anymore.
No, so I want you to just close your eyes and just sort of settle into the chair or wherever you might happen to be sitting, or maybe you're laying down. Don't be driving though, however. And really what I'm going to invite you to do is deliberately, I want you to breathe just into your heart space. And as you breathe into your heart space, the specific breath I want you to reach for is the one that equals all is well. Because your body knows how to breathe that way. And I want you to deliberately breathe as if all is well. So just a couple of more full breaths that equal all is well, but specifically breathing them into your heart space itself. Just keep settling in, letting your analytical mind kind of be, breathe and be in your heart space. And just one more. And I'm going to invite you to just envision a situation, a someone, a something. Maybe you're struggling with it. Kind of like talked about earlier, there were two men before me that were angry at the airport, and they were in front of me, and that was a situation in front of me. You could also just envision our human race and our growth around racism as a topic or a subject. What I invite you to do is I want you to breathe again, the breath of all is well. I want you to be in your heart space. And there is this word, but there's this energy called love and divine love. And it comes from this heart space. And in your own way, in the best way that you can, I want you to just envision you're going to send it out to this person, to this situation that you choose to focus on. And I don't want you to try to do it with effort. You're not trying to change anything. It's just a way you're going to try to bless what's before you. But you're genuinely going to breathe in a breath that equals all is well. And you're going to reach for that feeling, that energy, that's divine love. And you're going to send it and send it. And just feel yourself sending it to that situation. Feel it wrapping around that situation. Holding that situation. And by holding it, it blesses that situation, that person, that thing. And just for a few moments in your own way, keep breathing that breath of all is well. Keep being in your heart space. And keep sending and holding this person, this situation in this divine love and in this divine space. And just bless it. And just bless it. And on your own, you could do this for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. When I did it at the airport, I did it long enough to feel it. I felt the energy of love being sent. And just when you're ready, I'll invite you to kind of come back and open your eyes and rejoin, knowing you can do that at any time and anywhere, even in an airport.
Michael, you are a blessing to me. Thank you for offering your grace and your blessings and your energy to this community and literally to the world.
You are welcome. You are welcome. You are welcome.
May all the blessings that you offer, may they, and I know they return to you multiplied.
Cool.
Yeah. May it be so this day.
Thank you.
Amen and amen.
Amen.
Thank you for that.